Hi, I'm Chef Cable Smith. This is the Royal in LaJoy Park. Let me show you around. This is the Royal. It used to be an old liquor store before Paul Carlson and his family bought it. I've been here for 6 years now. A eatery. This restaurant, when I first came in and met Paul, reminded me so much of Austin and Atlanta. Austin and Atlanta are really similar. They're both kind of like funky places. They've got a lot of cool, like interesting people, but the Royal kind of had the same feel. It's just kind of like hip, but pretentious. It's not trying to be too cool. And so we just try to make really good food and a fun little space. I would want to have a neighborhood bar like the Royal in a neighborhood that I lived in. So that's what we're always shooting for. 2016, my wife had finished law school in Austin and she came out here. She got a job on the Hill that was really great. 2 things on the menu that were just already great, and so those things don't need. So really I just took like that base idea of what they were doing, what people already loved. Things just slowly like morphed and took off. And we try to make every dish to have like a little bit of Latin flair, but without being like a full Colombian restaurant. The neighborhood really kind of makes the restaurant. The menu is really based on what everybody wants at any restaurant you go to. Oftentimes I'm talking to our regulars that are here. I'm like, what do you want to see? What do you like? It's like, oh, we love this. Don't get rid of this no matter what. So it's turned out that 80% of our menu now is staples that people come in for all the time, and they don't want to see it go anywhere, which is great. It means that our consistency is there to have a dish on a menu that's lasted for 6-7 years, that scope, and people still love it. That means that your staff is doing a great job and that the consistency is there. It makes it sad because you want to make new stuff and people are like, no, don't change it. Just leave it exactly how it is. But I've got a few dishes that people are fine with me changing constantly. Our salads are always evolving based on the seasons and what we can get and everything. So it makes it a lot better to do that. The fish changes from time to time what it is, but it's this lime coconut rice that we make with this kind of like tomato seafood broth that goes underneath, cilantro oil and lime. It's just like very bright, very clean. It's pretty simple actually, but everybody loves it. And they're like, don't take this fish away. That's a don't touch. The citrus kale salad we make with like a fermented chili peanut vinaigrette, and nobody wants that to go anywhere. So I just had my first kid, and we were so excited. His name's Emmer Smith. Isn't he great? And it's just been absolutely incredible. So I'm trying to take more time in the morning to hang out and do all the helping with him, because you don't realize how much you miss this brand new person that you didn't even know until you're gone at work all day. And I'm like, been looking at my phone at pictures all day long. So yeah, it's really hard to get stuff done with a brand new kid just because you miss them so much. It's hard being a cook. It's very hard. It's very long hours. So we wanted to make food that we wanted to eat, that we thought was excellent, but still not so much that we were like up at night worried and like stressing about it. I think that's what we've done here. Just make really good food that we're proud of. But if something goes wrong, I'm not going to freak out. It's just not that big of a deal at the end of the day. It's hard to be competitive in the city. There's so many big restaurants who have like big pocketbooks. I mean, DC has some of the most incredible food in the country, like by far. But the chefs here are the best. It's like a really cool community of chefs to hang out with. In some of the other cities I've worked at, nobody all hangs out. But a lot of the chefs here hang out together. There's all these little groups and we see each other at all these events. It's really nice to have those connections with other chefs. You get to see each other at these events. It's just like no time has passed at all. You get to catch up and hang out. It's really great. This is the best job ever. If you can get through all of this, and then at the end, it's amazing because you're just really doing what you want. You're feeding people, you're making people happy. That's why everybody wants to be a chef. Yeah, that's what it is.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this talk with Chef Cable Smith. I want to thank everyone who's watching, and I want to thank the American Center in Moscow for hosting us. Cable, I want to ask you first, how's your son? How's your son doing?
Oh, he's amazing. I just dropped him off at daycare. I have the morning times with him, and then my wife gets to pick him up in the evenings. My job's harder. I have to take him and physically give him to the daycare where he's like, "What's going on?" And she gets the good job of picking him up and being really
Taking him
excited
back.
yeah, he's always like, "Why is my dad abandoning me every day?" But yeah, he's great and healthy and happy, and he's the best thing ever.
Good. He's so cute in that video, that shot of him on your phone.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you, how did you become a chef? Like, what did you want to be a cook when you were a kid, or was it something you just sort of fell into? How did it start?
I think that I always liked eating food. I think that's like
Me too.
the basic of wanting to like make food. Just wanting to take care of people, I think is the very bottom level of it, of just like wanting to take care of people, and then you start getting into food yourself. But my very first job was in a restaurant, and that really was the catalyst that got me going down the path. I started like bussing tables when I was 16 years old, and I really enjoyed the community. Everybody just kind of hangs out together after work. There's a lot of camaraderie with it because if it's got a lot of like, it's kind of like the military. Everybody watches each other's back. If one person is going down, the person next to you has to like stand in and help you out. So that camaraderie just kind of resonated with me. But I ended up working in that job when I was in high school, and I kept the same job for 11 years all the way through college. And I just loved it. And so when I was in college, I went to school to be an engineer, and I was writing software, just sitting in a cubicle, and it just wasn't for me. First off, I didn't want to be sitting all day, and I just kind of missed the group interaction and stuff. And so it was at the time when here in the United States, there was this huge boom of like everything was chef related. All the TV shows were like chef cook off challenges and everything. They did a really great job of wanting to get people into the field. And it just happened to be at that very same time. And so I went to Culinary 13 years ago now. And so I've been doing it ever since.
And so going to culinary school, I assume you learned sort of classic French techniques and the 5 sauces and all that stuff. But the food you're serving at Royal is more Latin based, Colombian. So how do you apply those skills that you learned in school to the food that you're making now?
Yes, sir. It's a good question. When you go to school to be classically French trained, it's not recipes they teach you. They're just teaching you techniques on this. This cut of meat has a lot of connective tissue in it and stuff like that. This is the way you will always cook this piece of meat. You always braise it because you need a lot of long, slow, low temperatures to cook it. It's going to break down all these meats. And so a lot of kids in school didn't realize the knowledge they were gaining from it. A lot of them were actually kind of upset. They're like, "Oh, I thought we were going to be learning a lot more recipes." But when you get all of these techniques underneath your belt, when you get out into the real world, it's so helpful because you can cook any cuisine. I could cook Greek food. I could cook Colombian food. It just happened to be that my business partners I met are from Colombia. And so taking those tools of what I learned in school and just focusing them on a different cuisine. I just got a whole bunch of books and just kind of immersed myself in it, and then use all my techniques from school just to make our menu.
And I know you have a second restaurant other than the one we saw in the video. Does that serve the same sort of cuisine, or is that a different thing?
It doesn't. Paul and I opened that March of 2020 was our grand opening.
Not
It was
very good
literally, yeah, right before the pandemic hit. And we were very lucky. It's got just like a beautiful outdoor space, but it's not the same. It is a wine version of a beer garden. That's what we wanted. Paul really enjoys wine. We just wanted that feeling of going to a beer garden, the communal seating, just kind of like the snacky food. We wanted people just to be able to like hang out and enjoy their time and enjoy like the beautiful space, have some snacky food. It's not a dinner place, but just a good place for like gathering with your friends. And thank goodness we had all that open outdoor seating, because as the pandemic started to progress, things started to lighten up and people were allowed to come outside again. We were instantly popular just because there was so much space for people to get to enjoy outside.
And so you were able to serve during the pandemic?
Yes, sir. Both restaurants, we kept them going. We had to modify our style of service for a little bit. We started off just doing to-go food, which was interesting. We learned a lot about doing that, because at first they didn't let anybody into the restaurants. It was just carry out only. So we switched to that, and as things started to open up, we changed the restaurants to go along with the rules and regulations that the city was enforcing. And both of them did well. Washington D.C. is just an excellent spot to be for a pandemic. Everybody was very thoughtful and careful, and everybody loves to eat here. It's the biggest thing everybody does in DC is politics and eating. So we were really lucky to be in such a nice spot.
Right. Luckily, politics and eating kind of go together.
They do. They're hand in hand, and you can do both of them at the same time.
Right. So it's interesting to hear you talk about DC specifically. And earlier you were talking about how one of the things that attracted you to cooking was the teamwork aspect of it. And it seems like your restaurants derive a lot from the community you're in. And so how do you think that kind of restaurants in general foster a sense of community in neighborhoods?
Yeah, I think that for a long time, especially when I was growing up and stuff, I don't know how it is for everybody else, but I grew up in like small country towns, and it's just a lot of like Chili's and Applebee's and those kind of restaurants that are just very impersonal. And so when you get into a city, you have to cater to the area that you're in, because cities are really walkable. People want to go to the places close by to them. It's very hard. It takes up a lot of your night to get in an Uber or jump on the metro and go clear across the city. People want to have something close to their house that they can go to, like especially multiple times a week. There are big restaurants that are super expensive that you can only afford to go to once a month. And so we wanted a place that would kind of mold as the day went on. And so it's a coffee shop in the morning time. Lots of people come into work. They bring their laptops and they sit, and we have like sandwiches and just very easy stuff. And as the day progresses, the restaurant kind of turns into a cocktail bar at night with more like dinner style dishes. And I think that's what I think that's what the neighborhood wanted from a restaurant. It's not very expensive. It's very shareable. We wanted a community space at both of the restaurants, just for people to feel welcome, kind of like a Cheers vibe, where we recognize people come in, they eat, they bring their families, and it doesn't break the bank where they can be there. Actually, a good percentage of our guests are there 3-4 times a week. And so we like that. It means we're doing something right if we see the same people coming back over and over.
Sure. And you were saying earlier that your restaurant is close to a university, so you probably have a lot of students coming in.
Yes, sir. It runs the gamut of all the ages. We have a lot of students. We have a lot of older people who've been in the neighborhood for years and years, who've owned their houses for 20, 30 years that come in. And we try to just get a feel from all of them. We know most of them by name, to talk to them, see what they like, see what they're into, so that it's so hard to be a chef sometimes and just be like, I want to make what I want to make. It's not really about us as chefs. It's really about the people around you. You want to make food that everybody enjoys. And if you can slip some of your own like favorites in there and some of your own techniques and stuff, then you really won on both fronts.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about, I'm jealous of the fact that you have created this neighborhood restaurant, because I live in Los Angeles, which is very big and spread out. and it's basically impossible. You know, if you want to go out to dinner with somebody, you need to make a plan 2 days in advance and
Right.
figure out where you're going to park and drive a half an hour each way. And the idea of a place like Royal where you can just kind of waltz in and like cheers, everybody knows your name. That is such an attractive proposition, you know?
Yes, sir. And then we try to change enough stuff on the menu that it doesn't feel static to the people that are eating there all the time. There's the group of like favorites that never change, but we're also constantly adding fresh seasonal things too. So everybody is happy. The people who've never been there before, plus our regulars, there's something new for everyone.
That's great. I'm interested, you know, there are a lot of news stories now about the unhealthfulness of the Western diet, you know, and there's a big problem with obesity in a lot of Western countries. And I'm wondering if when you're cooking, are you thinking about healthfulness in your recipes? Or because I know some chefs are just like, I want to make it taste as good as possible, no matter how, you know, how much fat or calories. Is it something that you take into account, or is taste your main criteria?
I take into account the healthiness quite a bit, and I think that's also dictated by our area. I think we have a lot of people around us who are trying to eat consciously. Yes, sir. And so that dictates it. If you make just really heavy fatty food, it is delicious. I feel like it's just a lot harder to eat that every day. I feel like that's more of an indulgence that I'll do once a week. Like, oh, I'm going to eat this delicious meal, but I can only eat that once a week.
Right.
But
You're
if
going to
you
have
have
to take a nap.
right, yeah, you'll be sleeping the rest of it off.
Right.
But if you have just light, uh, a lot of our dishes are kind of like salad, vegetable forward. It's a lot easier to eat that, I feel like, multiple days a week, and we still have a couple of indulgent menu items if people want to get there. But yeah, a lot of it. And I grew up eating really healthy food, and so I think that that played a big part into it.
Yeah, well, that interests me because, you know, you just had a child. And so how are you going to sort of foster an appreciation of food in general? I mean, I guess just living in your household, your child is going to have good food.
Right.
But is it something that you're going to sort of concentrate on and make sure your kid enjoys eating or enjoys healthy eating?
We're going to try to. My parents did that, and it worked out. When we were young, I don't think we appreciated it as much. But as I get older, I'm really glad that they fostered that in our household. So I think it's just really important just to sit down and eat together as a family. I think it's one of the most important things you can do. Just to hear about everybody's days, it just keeps you really connected in each other's lives. So we eat dinner together every single night. And that's even with me coming home late from work sometimes. Like last night I got home at 9:30 and I cook a full meal for us and we all sit down and eat. My dad's in town right now, so it was nice. But I think if like the 80-20 rule, if 80% of the time you're cooking healthy-ish food, whole foods, fruits, vegetables, just meats and stuff like that, and 20% of the time you back off it a little bit, I think it's the best way to go. I think just even having your kids see cooking in your household as like a group thing and the importance of it. I think if they see that at a young age, they're more likely to adopt that into their lifestyle as they get older.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, when I was a kid, it was a rule in our house that we all had to sit down together for dinner. And we did the same thing. If my dad was going to be late, you know, then we held dinner until dad got home. And it's something that obviously you don't appreciate when you're a kid.
Right.
But,
you're like, why am I here?
Right. But it really does make a big difference. And it teaches you that having a meal together with people that you love is an important thing that binds people together.
Yes, sir. And it just creates so many memories. All of my favorite memories when I look back at it are all holidays, and it's all just everybody sitting around eating together, just hearing stories and stuff like that. I
So
think that's
true.
what life's all
Yeah.
about.
So, I mean, you're obviously a very successful, award-winning chef. What do you think is there a sort of innate skill that makes people maybe better at cooking? Like, is there something that you feel like you were born with that gave you a leg up, or did you just learn as you went? And
I don't know. I always enjoyed art. I did a lot of art as a kid, so I think part of it is art, just
sure, it's
being able
creative.
to make food look good. It's funny, you get on Instagram nowadays and there's all of these posts of these beautiful plates, and I'm always like, I wonder if that tastes good. So I think it's a portion of it is the art side of it. A portion of it is, do you know what good food tastes like? There's some people who just have never had good food. I've had the opportunity to eat a lot of different kinds of food. I've done lots of traveling, a lot of different cuisines. I think the more input you have, the better your output is. And also being successful as a chef is a function of your ability to endure failure and rejection. It's just, there's a lot of mistakes you make before you figure out what is good. Everybody, even home cooks, they'll find a recipe online and they'll be like, this recipe looks great. I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna make this. And they make it and it doesn't turn out as expected to them. And I tell everybody, I'm like, just keep making that. Make that recipe 10 times, because each time there's going to be little nuances and changes and stuff that you make to get it right to where you want it. You can't just accept that you failed one time. You're like, that just wasn't it. That recipe was awful, and just keep moving on. You'll just never be able to be successful that way. So I think it's a mixture of a bunch of different things, but I just happened to get some of those. And also it's the people you surround yourself with. I think in any job, if you surround yourself with other successful people, it drives you. It works that way in sports too. If you put somebody who's not that great on a team with really great competitors, they're going to just learn a lot faster. I just happen to go specifically seek out really great restaurants to work at, just so I could learn as much as I can from everybody around me.
Yeah, something that really always impressed me about my mother, who was not a professional cook, but is a great cook, is, I would ask her how to make stuff that she made for us when we were kids that I wanted to make for myself. And she just has this innate knowledge, which I'm sure you also have, of ingredients, and she'll say, and then you put a little basil in there, and I'll say, how much basil? And she'll be like, oh, until it tastes good.
Right.
She's not following recipes. And so is that when you cook, are you doing that same sort of thing? Like you just are feeling your way through it because you know the ingredients, you know the techniques?
Yeah, 100%. At home, I cook a lot of Vietnamese and Thai food. I just think it's so interesting. I'm really obsessed with textures in food, and so it really drew me in. So when I start a new recipe that's something just so far out of my wheelhouse, there's ingredients oftentimes in there that I've never even heard of. I just kind of figure out what the purpose of the ingredient is in the dish. And when you figure out that everybody's palate works the same way, people like things that are a little sweet, a little salty, a little acidic. If you look at all of our condiments in America, they all have the same things in them. Mayonnaise, ketchup, mustard, they're a little sweet, they're a little salty, they're a little acidic. And it's because it's pleasing to our palates. So we start breaking down recipes and figuring out that, oh, this ingredient is the sweet thing in this recipe. This is the salty thing. Asian cultures use soy sauce as their salty thing, and they're using palm sugars and stuff as the sweetness, and they bring in spice and they bring in textures. Once you figure out those things, then you can start to kind of like freehand on your own. You figure out that this is the base sauce and I'm going to add these things. And so that's how I work up when I'm doing something new.
And so you're interested by Asian cooking, and your restaurant is sort of influenced by Latin cooking. But you were sort of saying earlier, you just kind of fell into that because it was an already existing restaurant when you came in. Are there other genres of food or types of food that you personally sort of like the most? Like, do you prefer, I don't know, French food or Mexican food or whatever? Is there a different genre of food than the one that you cook that, like, when you go out to eat, you would want to have?
It's hard. It changes from time to time. I think the French definitely revolutionized cooking. They came up with all the best techniques and rules and stuff, but I feel like it's kind of stayed kind of static for a while. They've been making and just perfecting the same recipes for so long. My family and I really, really like traveling to France and just eating all of these classics. I think all these Asian cultures are they just have such strong flavors. They just like are like a punch to the mouth. They're so strong and they have so many interesting things going on. I think that's why I'm currently just so in love with it. I love Latin culture. I love the people. I love how family oriented they are. I love the food, especially. It's just so delicious. It's spicy. It's sweet. It has all this care and thought into it. That's why I really like it. I would love Mexico and just see all the tacos and everything. It's just everything is just really buried in their culture. So I think Latin cuisine is my favorite overall, and so I think that's why it was such a good fit for the restaurant. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the best things about eating in Los Angeles is the Latino culture here. And it's funny, the sort of the best Latin food you get here isn't really in restaurants, it's in trucks.
100%.
Yeah, and there are just taco trucks everywhere, and it's delicious.
Yeah, people have this idea that good food is expensive, and they should get that out of their head. Good food just has the most heart and everything into it, and once you start to figure that out and find all these little holes in the walls and stuff, Jonathan Silverman was just amazing at that out in LA, just finding and really lifting up these tiny places. I think that really pushed the restaurant culture in the right direction, just watching him highlight these little tiny restaurants.
Yeah, and I grew up in New Orleans, and in New Orleans the culture is very much the same. There are some fine dining places, but the best places are the sort of holes in the wall that make po' boys or whatever.
Absolutely.
Crawfish, and there's something really to be said. And then I think those places influence the more expensive, higher class places.
Absolutely.
I'm wondering if you ever have had, since we're speaking to a lot of people in Russia right now, have you ever had Russian cuisine, or are you interested at all in that, or?
I haven't. I've had little bits. I have a chef friend out here who has a Georgian restaurant, so I've gotten tiny little bits of it, and I've gotten some borscht and stuff like that. Just incredible, and just how much flavor you can build off of. I'm sure it has to be so difficult with just like the type of ingredients and the weather and stuff like that to make such deep, homey feeling dishes with just like very few ingredients. I've got a lot of respect for any culture.
Yeah, every time I've been to Russia, I love Georgian food.
Right.
And it's hard to find in the States. There's one restaurant I know of in LA that has it, and even in New York, there's only like two.
Right.
But every time I go to Russia, that's my favorite food by far. They make this bread called khachapuri. Have you had that? It's delicious. It's like a flatbread, but they sort of half bake it and then stuff it with cheese.
Oh, you have it.
Finish baking it, so it just has this melted cheese inside. It's really delicious.
That's incredible.
So what's your do you have plans for the future? Like you have 2 restaurants already. Is that enough, or are you thinking about expanding?
We want to come up with a quick service spot that is scalable. Both my partner and I are just getting to the age where we want to spend more time with our families. We want to come up with something that we can kind of oversee and just kind of spread our love of food out a little bit. So that's the plan right now. We'll see how it goes. It's always so hard to start coming up with ideas for something else while you're just pouring all of your ideas into your 2 places you have. I
Right.
think it's just about acquiring more talent, more human capital to.
If you do that, would you go in a different genre, or would you stay with sort of the Latin influenced cuisine?
We probably stay a little Latin influenced. It's just both of us just really love it. Yeah, we'd probably do something in the same wheelhouse, but just something quick service. People can get it out. I think that's where the trend is going to turn in the United States. It's just the overhead and how much money it takes to get into owning and operating a restaurant. It's just really difficult. I think you're going to see a lot of big chefs go into smaller kind of like fast food. Also, fast food needs a makeover, especially in the United States. Fast food here is unhealthy. If we can have chefs come in and make quicker fast food that's healthier, I think that's a good trend for.
Do you think that is financially feasible to create something like that?
I think so. I think that the problem with any restaurant or any business in general is that once things get too big, it gets out of your control. I think why chef-driven restaurants and concepts are so successful is that they are very personal, and that even I know as having 2 restaurants, it's a lot harder than just having 1 restaurant. I'm sure it's the way with kids. We have 1 kid now, and we pour all of our love and all of our attention into 1. And you get 2, and you're like, what am I supposed to do now? You just half the amount of attention goes into it. So kudos to parents with lots of kids. I don't know how to do it, but I'm sure it's going to be the same thing with restaurants. But if you can find good people to work for you, I mean, Chick-fil-A is pound for pound the most successful restaurant in the United States. And they do it by having excellent employees and excellent standards. The scope of their menu isn't that big. They're just doing fast food, but they're doing it well. They have like 6-8 things on the menu, and that's what they focus on. I think if you can put that kind of attention into a chef-driven fast food concept, you can have the same amount of success.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever had In-N-Out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same thing.
Do it well. Yes, sir.
Fresh ingredients.
Absolutely.
But I guess what interests me is if you do that, if you expand in that way, it would kind of mean you would have to step out of the kitchen.
Right.
And just kind of oversee a much bigger enterprise. And is that something that would it be hard for you to do that, you think?
I would miss being in the kitchen all the time. But if I have a great staff already, if they could just watch it and I could check in on them from time to time and make sure everything's going well, I'm ready. I'm going to be 42 next month. I'm getting too old to be standing and cooking and getting hot every day. So I would welcome that. I'll be ready to move on to more of just a creative side of it versus all the physical work.
Yeah, and that actually interests me because I know my brother actually owned a restaurant on Martha's Vineyard, and I know that kind of the culture of working in kitchens is it's like a work hard, play hard kind of culture. Right. And a lot of the people tend to be younger people, and the hours are long, but then people tend to go out after and maybe overindulge a little bit after work. And so how do you deal with that being, a 42-year-old father?
I don't partake in any of that anymore. I used to when I was younger and I had the energy and stuff to do that. Also, as a chef, you have to watch there's a very fine line where you can still get your work done and do that. I think a lot of chefs often get sucked into like alcoholism and drugs and stuff like that. It's so easy to get into that in the restaurant to try to cope with the long hours and stuff like that. I was lucky enough not to get into that and just focus all my energy on the creative process and the work itself. But yeah, it's a dangerous thing. It's just being around it all the time. There's alcohol in the restaurant. It's fun. You just really kind of have to watch yourself. But as a young person, it was a blast. You go out, you have drinks with people after work. You don't have to come into work till because restaurants open a lot later, so you get to sleep in.
Right.
It's a different type of lifestyle. It was very fun. I was really happy to be a part of it.
But it sounds like from the video that you still have a community of chefs that you're close with in DC.
Yes, sir. Yeah, there's lots of events constantly in DC. Organizations will put on these events. They're always to raise money for something great, and then they bring in chefs to cook for these events. So we get to see each other all the time, and it's nice to have a fair amount of philanthropic work that we get to be a part of to help. I'd like to do more of that as I get older. The philanthropic side of getting help and feed people. I think everybody deserves to have their most basic needs met, eating being one of them. And so I always really enjoy that. Plus, you get to see your friends and you get to be creative, and sometimes you get stuck in this tunnel of just doing your own thing. And if you don't get to go out and eat or taste other people's food, it's just hard. Your creative process is often just static. So to get to go taste other people's food and get ideas from it, it's really what half of the job is about.
That attitude impresses me so much, and you're going to see how small-minded I am by asking you this question. But it seems like, I think it's a fact that the restaurant business is an incredibly difficult and competitive business. I know that in New York City, something like 95% of all restaurants close within 9 months or something.
Right.
It's a really tough business. And so, you are competing with other restaurants. Like if somebody goes to another restaurant, they're not going to your restaurant. So do you ever feel that sense of competition with these other chefs, or are you guys above that?
I don't think so. I don't know about them. I don't ever feel that. I always feel bummed out if we have like some slow nights. I'm like, where are all the people at and stuff like that. But it kind of helps push us to be like, times are slow right now. We need to just keep focused, keep our consistency, keep doing what we're doing, and the people will come, and it seems to work out.
That's great. And I'm wondering, when you were a kid, bussing tables as a teenager, did you ever think that you would be where you are now?
Absolutely not, which is funny. I liked it. And like I told you the stuff earlier, I liked just the feeling of community and stuff like that. It wasn't until I started getting older and thought of it as a job, I was like, I know all the intricacies of a restaurant from being in there for 11 years. I was like, if I can figure out how to cook, that's one more component. That's actually the last component to the restaurant that I didn't know about. So that's why I gave it a shot. I knew the failure rate was high for chefs. But I think as an individual, if you're focused on failure, you're just not going to do well anyways. I just wanted to go in and work hard and learn as much as I can. And I'm very lucky that everything has worked out as well as it has.
And when you made that decision to go to culinary school, you had been studying engineering, you were a computer programmer. Were your parents at all worried or disappointed? Like, because that's a riskier thing
right.
to do.
Thank goodness, no. They were so supportive. And I think that's all you can really do for your kids is just support them, try to it's like being a leader in a restaurant. I think a lot of times people have the wrong idea of what being a leader is. It's really just to be able to identify the core competencies of the people around you and assist them to get them to do what they need to do. As a chef, I come up with the dishes, but I need to be able to assist the rest of my staff to make sure they have all the tools they need, to make sure everything is in place for them to make the right decisions. So I think that's the same thing for parents. If your kids show an interest in it, you should try to foster that. And money isn't that important. If I would have not been successful, they still would have been proud of me to try something. I think that's all you can really hope for. I'm gonna try to do that for my son, and hopefully he'll be good. Also, the world is changing so much nowadays. There's like fewer people going to college. There's just a lot of like entrepreneurial type personalities in the world. Everybody's doing crazy stuff that I never would have thought you could be successful with 10, 15 years ago, that people are really showing me wrong constantly.
Well, I think you could easily be an influencer.
If I was younger and I had more energy, maybe so. I think I was out of the loop.
I'm interested because we were talking a little bit earlier about Instagram. Do you think about that at all when you're kind of preparing a dish? Like, are there dishes that you try and make Instagram friendly so that people can take pictures of them? I know you're interested in aesthetics, which is important.
Right.
And good.
I do. Yeah. If you have people taking care of your food, it's just like free marketing nowadays. My other restaurant, Lulu's, it is very Instagrammable. We thought about that in the conception of the business. Our target audience is young women. They love it. It's got like a Southwest vibe, wine and just kind of snacks and stuff. And they come in and they take pictures of the space and they put it out there. And it's just the best free marketing you can ever have for yourself. So I try to make the food. They always say you eat with your eyes first. And so if I have people taking pictures of it, I'm happy. I used to be really good about using Instagram. And I think around the time of the pandemic, I got kind of fed up with some of the social media and stuff. And so I stopped using it as much. We have somebody who takes care of all of our social media accounts and does post pictures of the food. Thank goodness, because I'm kind of bad at that.
And do you worry about, or do you take into account like Yelp reviews and things like that? Like, do you have to worry about what people are saying about your restaurant online?
You do, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. With anything that happens, somebody could just have one bad experience. It could be completely out of your ability to solve it at that time. But they do hurt. So we post all of our reviews from all of our sites, Google, Yelp, everything, in an email once a week. If you only focus on the negative ones, it's really harmful for your mental health and stuff like that. But when you sandwich those in with how many great reviews you get, it's really helpful. It kind of keeps you going. So we look at the bad ones. We take the good information from them, the constructive criticism from them. Some people, when they go out to eat, they're already in a bad mood. There's nothing you can do to fix that for them. But the people who have like real constructive things to say, we take that in and we try to fix it, and we do what we can to make everybody happy.
That's great. And I was very impressed in the video when you sort of talk about how you just need to have a positive attitude about the endeavor. And, if you have a bad night, that's not the end of the world. And,
right.
You just need to come back. And it seems like you're sort of saying that, stick-to-itiveness is a huge part of being a chef.
Yes, sir. And one of the things that makes it the best job in the world is that it's a brand new start every day. A lot of jobs, people come home, they've got a lot of baggage and it carries on for the week. They're like, oh, we have these huge projects we have to do. You can have a horrible night on the line as a cook. You can burn down. You can have 25-minute ticket times. You can screw up a lot of plates. At the end of the night, my job as a chef is to talk to that cook and say, you know what? Bad day. You didn't do so hot, but tomorrow is a brand new day. The restaurant closes. Everything is clean. It's refilled. And when you come in, it's just a fresh slate. So the next day, as a young cook, if you have the will to become a chef, each day you just try to be a little bit better and show the people around you that, hey, you know what? I screwed up, but I'm back today. I'm going to be better than ever. And you just constantly are learning from your mistakes.
That's great. So I think at some point we're going to be taking questions from people who are watching us.
Perfect.
Unfortunately, I'm looking at my screen and I don't have the chat screen up, so I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. But and there's
great. I have my chat screen up.
Okay, so and I can see that the comments are coming in, but I can't access them. So Cable, you are now both the guest and the moderator.
Okay, perfect. So I can just start at the top and go down.
Yeah, why don't you do one, and I'm gonna reboot my browser while you're answering your own question. Oh, here it is. Great.
Oh,
would you
awesome.
would you rather eat a meal with great flavor but mediocre texture, or great texture but mediocre flavor?
Oh man, that's a tough one. My favorite thing is texture. I was addicted to like chips and crunchy things as a kid, so I try to add that in. I guess I'm going to go with flavor because I think there are overall better meals, like meals I think of like, I call them like grandma meals that like my grandma or my grandpa used to make, which are like roasts. They're just like slow cooked meat with like
Comfort food.
potatoes, yeah, and gravy, all that comforty food. It didn't have texture, but the flavor was just so loving and stuff. So I'm going to go better flavor, less texture, even though that hurts my heart to say that.
All right. What has your personal experience been with perfectionism in the restaurant industry, and how have you developed a sense of this balance over the course of your career?
That's a very thoughtful, good question. I had a very hard time with it. I very much want everything to be perfect. And that's the thing that keeps me up at night versus anything else, versus little tiny mistakes. I want it to be perfect. But I had to learn that it's not going to be. There's just too many moving components going on in a restaurant for it to be perfect. I can't even imagine. I've never been to any of these 3 Michelin star restaurants. I hope to one day, but I can't even imagine being a chef at a 3 Michelin star restaurant where everything hinges on perfection. And if not, I think it creates an environment where you can have a lot of just bad attitudes. You can have a lot of anger in environments like that, because as a chef, if everything is perfect and something goes wrong, obviously you're going to be mad at whoever screwed it up. And I think that if you can get rid of those things and just kind of have like a restaurant that you're happy with, if things don't go out perfectly, we'll just try harder the next day. I think there's just a lot of fault and perfectionism in the restaurant.
So it sounds like in your kitchen, there isn't that rigid hierarchy like you see on TV where people are going, yes, chef.
No. And I know everybody loves that. And I have worked in restaurants like that, and it is fun, but it is also so stressful. Just that it's also stressful as a young cook, just to be so scared that if you screw one thing up, you could get something thrown at you. I just don't think that's a good environment to be in. And also, everybody learns differently. I have staff members that work really well under pressure. I have staff members that work really well under praise. You have to tell them what a great job they're doing all the time. And so in a restaurant that hinges on absolute perfection, I think that you're just, without a doubt, you're going to end up being just kind of overbearing, and it's going to be bad for the people around you. Very happy that there are restaurants like that. I just personally could not be that person.
But it's interesting to me because it sounds like you're saying to be a successful chef, you need to be as adept at handling people as you do at handling food.
100%. Yeah, it's part of the business. Be able to handle people and the food. It's somebody told us, I think I learned in culinary school, it's the only job in the world that uses all of your senses. When you're cooking a steak in a pan, you have to listen for that sizzle to know that the pan is hot enough. You're touching things to make sure they're done. You're tasting, you're smelling. And so it's the same part of the business. You have to be able to manage people. You have to be able to manage expectations, the creative side of it. It's a very complex thing to get into.
All right, next question. Do you think culinary school is important for aspiring chefs, or is it a better use of aspiring chefs' time to gain real life experience working in kitchens?
This is a really good question also. It depends on the type of person you are and money. It's a big financial burden to take on nowadays. Culinary schools are expensive. I learned a lot in mine, but I went into culinary school at a little bit older age where I'd already been to college. And so I think that everybody should have to go to school to learn a little bit about themselves and to just gain a certain amount of experience. But I know most chefs that I know are chefs that just started off in a kitchen somewhere and they learned and they were just so incredible at soaking up experience that it was really beneficial for them. I really enjoyed the like scientific process of it, of learning why stuff works and how to cook food and all that. So I took a lot from culinary school. So I think it really just depends on what kind of person you are. And if you have the money and can afford to do it, I just took out a bunch of student loans. I still have to pay them off now. I was very happy doing it. I went to a good culinary school too.
Can I ask where you went?
I went to TCA, the Texas Culinary Academy in Austin. It's now been changed. I think it's just a Le Cordon Bleu school now, but fantastic, really great teachers. I would definitely go back and do it again.
And did your background in engineering help at all, or
100%. I had in college a bunch of classes on thermodynamics and fluid mechanics, and to understand why something works is so much easier to be able to take on a new technique and be like, oh, I understand why I'm covering this when I cook it, what's happening at like a molecular level with food. So I think that helped me out a bunch.
Oh, that's great. Do you ever cook anything sous vide?
We do some stuff, and there is a time and a place for it. At a certain point in the culinary world, sous vide was all over the place. Everybody was sous videing everything. And it's also taking away from cooks to not understand. You should be able to understand how to cook something regular first, and then to be able to take the technique of sous videing something and elevate it if you need to. But if you're totally missing that first step of understanding how something works when you're cooking it, and you're just like, I cook it in the bag and the bag does it and that's it.
The bag does the work.
Yeah, I think you're missing out on it.
Right. Okay, next question. I've heard that almost 2,000 people voted in the petition to bring Waffle House to DC. What are your thoughts on this chain? Would you sign it too?
100%. Waffle House is the greatest. We had Waffle Houses, and I went to college at the University of Oklahoma, and there's Waffle Houses everywhere in Oklahoma, and it's an American staple. I love it. Everybody thinks that chefs just eat like fancy food all the time, and it's the complete opposite. Mostly we're eating chips and fast food and Waffle House, and I miss Waffle House. I would go eat at Waffle House right now.
Yeah, there aren't. I mean, that's why there's the petition. There aren't any in DC.
Right. And I think there might be some outside. I think there was one in Richmond.
Yeah, there must be in Virginia, right? I think of it as a Southern thing.
I know. Me too. And I miss it. And it's so good. And there's also just like a good sense of like culture that you can find in Waffle House. You'll meet people at 2 o'clock in the morning at a Waffle House that you'll never get to meet anywhere else.
Right. Who doesn't like a delicious waffle?
I know.
What other advice would you give chefs looking to start a new restaurant?
Ooh, to start a new restaurant, start it with somebody else's money first, because it's going to be rough. Your very first restaurant, no matter how much time and effort you put into it, there are just so many things to learn that you're going to have a lot of failures along the way. So learn from some other people, get in on some new opening restaurants just to see how much hard work it takes to put into it. And then way later down the line, once you've learned everything, put your money in your own and go with it like that.
And if I can ask, like, is that what you did? Like,
yeah, absolutely. My first, and I became partners with the first owners that I opened a restaurant with. And it only lasted a year, but I learned a whole bunch. I learned what to do and what not to do.
That was in Austin?
In Dallas, Texas. We opened a bar there, and I was only a year and a half out of culinary school. I got the opportunity to do it, and I knew that it probably wasn't going to work out. I was like, there's nobody a year and a half out of culinary school who's just hitting a home run on their very first restaurant. But I thought that the opportunity was too good to pass up. And so I took it, and I'm still really great friends with those owners. And we all learned a lot in the process of it.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like the restaurant business is like, the Titanic, but instead of one iceberg, there's 100, it's
100%.
Like there are just so many.
You're navigating a minefield constantly.
Yeah. It's so impressive what you've done.
Thank you so much.
What's your popular dessert in your restaurants? And have you ever tried a honey cake with mushroom cream? Sounds weird, but it is really tasty.
All right. As soon as I get done with this, I have to Google honey cake with mushroom cream because that sounds awesome. Ours, I don't do a lot of desserts. I don't even eat a lot of desserts. So we have done some in the past that people have liked, but right now we have one that they love, and so we don't change it. But in the past, we did avocado ice cream that we made from scratch with like a crumble topping, which is bitter chocolate and dried chilies and sea salt and peanuts, which sounds kind of strange, but it's just like this nice crunchy topping to go with this. The avocados are so fatty when you make ice cream from them from scratch. You don't even need eggs in the recipe like you do with a lot of homemade ice creams. We've done kind of like masa beignets, which are just like nixtamalized corn turned into beignet form with goat cheese ice cream and grilled peaches and stuff like that. But now our go-to that everybody loves and never wants us to change is a carrot cake with this pasilla chili caramel. And it's got salted coconut that's like crispy on top with raisins and pumpkin seeds. And everybody just goes crazy over it. And so we haven't changed it in years.
Yeah. And so, I mean, all the things you're mentioning are mixtures of sweet and savory, which
yes, sir,
most people like. And it sounds like that's what a honey cake with a mushroom sauce, I guess, is
kind of,
right?
I'm getting honey cake with mushroom sauce in my life as soon as I'm done.
All right. Well, I think that's it. That's the hour. And I just want to thank Cable Smith for talking to us. I want to thank everybody who's been watching. I want to thank the American Center in Moscow for hosting us. And if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, go to Royal.
Please. Yeah. Come visit me. It's so nice getting to be a part of this. I really appreciate it.